starting now. Good evening, punters, and welcome to another episode of The Tripod, where we break down every single NRL game every week from a punting perspective. We said last week it was a bad week for us, a 4-4 week on best bets. Usually we bounce back after a bad week, and we certainly did that this week, going 12-4 on best bets, which is one of our best weeks of the entire year. Really seeing the ball well coming down the stretch of the NRL season. Jacob, it was a fun round. How are you going?
Pretty good, mate. Look, I'll apologise to people if this audio and video gets out a little bit late. I've been unprofessional here. I've probably had a couple more drinks than I should do, and had a close family member riding a multi, paying, I'm talking mega dollars here, and it was linked with rugby league, but also AFL. My Nuggets won today, by the way, $7 halftime full time, which might have been in the multi. So this was paying big bucks, and it was AFL, it was the Western Bulldogs, and a lot of people listening don't care at all, but basically got them $2.40 to be the first team to score 50, and they close a $1.70 favourite. They end up winning the game, to cut a long story short, 49-47, but don't shed a tear for them because that's a push, and it's still paid quite a handsome sum, but that was hectic. And then I was rushed to obviously finish watching the footy to come here and recap it with you. So sorry if I'm frazzled, sorry if I'm a little bit bleary-eyed, but what I'm not sorry about is 12-4, another killer round of best bets.
An absolute killer round, and you don't have to tell people exactly what it paid, but we'll just say it's somewhere in between, would have paid somewhere in between the realms of 5 and 6 figures. Let's start with Thursday night, Jacob. We didn't have any best bets on the game. We had a side bet that I took some more money off you. It was the Panthers beating the Broncos 25 points to 12. I thought it was a decent game from the Broncos when they started. I thought they started really well. The forwards were bloody running hard, and I honestly thought that they were the better team for arguably the first 20 minutes, I would say. And then it was just the same old story with this Panthers side, and you said it, Jacob. They're just a team of destiny this year. That Cleary's just putting in these fifth tackle options, and I find it funny because you watch the Dragons Cowboys, let's say, that we just watched, or some of these other teams that aren't in the hunt for the top 8, and the fifth tackle options are honestly the difference between these top teams. I guess the Panthers were better in this one. Obviously, I thought the Broncos put in, but the Panthers just once again, and relentless is the word that I like to use with this Panthers side, because yes, they concede the first try, but after that, they are just relentless. They put pressure on you, and they ended up with a pretty comfortable win in the end.
That's right, and the line was around -22, and I would have laid it. I mean, when it was available under 22, I would have, because this Penrith team is just so ruthless, and with Brisbane, while they've got a few good players there and they can put it together for spells, you just know inevitably there'll be a window in a game where they'll drop their heads and things won't go their way and they'll let in kind of mass points. And as you say, they got the first try, but Penrith also conceded the first try to the Tigers and dismissed them 30-6. In this one, Penrith got back to, I think the lead was 20-6, and Penrith was knocking on the door. So again, I mean, I lose my side bet to you. You were brave. You took the points to Brisbane. But again, if they score there with 15 to go, they can easily run up a score and still win 30+. Brisbane holds them out, and you have to give credit to Brisbane. I actually agree it was one of their better performances because they never had that period in the game where they embarrassed themselves. They hung tough. They score a 50-metre try. Jordan Ricky, impressive young forward there, gets them back to a 20-12 game, and inevitably they go down, but they go down gallantly.
And we should say shout out to Josh Boone in the Tripod Punters Tips Forum group. He gave out Jordan Ricky as an anytime try scorer at $9. Obviously cashed that one. Let's move on to the Friday games. It's the Knights beating the Sharks 38 points to 10. We did have a number of best bets on this one. We cashed all 3 of them. We really like the Knights in this one. A lot of people disagreed with us after the terrible performance that the Knights showed last week. But that's exactly why we wanted to be on them this week. And they were awesome in this one, especially Ponga. He was back to his brilliant best. 3 tries in this one. And Lino in the halves, I really liked. I think they looked a lot better. Pearson Lino in the halves there. Obviously, an 88% completion rate helps this Knights team after last week where they made a bunch of errors. And I thought that the Sharks really missed Sean Johnson, especially fifth tackle options. And as well, I really like the Knights forward pack is good. I know we've said during the season that the Sharks forward pack, you've got a couple of older dudes in there, but they're still decent. I really thought that the Knights dominated the Sharks forwards in this one. And I guess one thing to keep in mind with this Sharks team, we said at the start of the season, and I've been saying it throughout the season, the Sharks team is legit when they're fully healthy. Now, they're not fully healthy. They have Sean Johnson out for a little while, and now a bunch of players facing, time on the sidelines for bans next week. I really think that when the Sharks team is not full strength, that they do become a fade team. They've got 3 guys looking at time on the sidelines next week, so that's something to keep in mind.
And those are key players. Chad Townsend, which was a key moment in the game. You probably saw that because it was a highlight play where he puts a flying shoulder charge on Ponga. And no doubt about it, the Sharks had said that, amongst the team, they would target Ponga.
And
they were roughing him up. Now. For what, concussion?
Yeah, they're resting him next week.
Okay, but he got battered and bruised all night. The Sharks, he embarrassed them multiple times in the game, and I think when they got in at halftime, Johnny Morris said just absolutely smash him, and they were hitting him hard early and often, but Townsend took it too far, and it was a funny one because Ponga was bringing it back for a restart, and then the ref blew time off or, told him to go back to the mark. And he actually stopped and relaxed. And to be fair, Townsend's come flying through, but regardless, it was a blatant shoulder charge. I still don't know if that's a send-off. And when you send a player off with 30 minutes to go, you end the game. And I think the Knights had a slender lead, or maybe an 8 or 10 point lead. But, it gives the Sharks zero opportunity there. They know because 2 weeks ago, they were benefited from a player sent off with half an hour to go. And now Townsend will face a stint on the sidelines. And Wade Graham, who's their best player, is also going to face the judiciary for lifting. Andrew Fafita has had a very tough year. He didn't make the 17. He's still dealing with injury. In saying that, you talk about the Knights forward pack. Daniel Saifiti played for New South Wales last year, still not back in this team, so they can improve. And it's a classic punting theory there where people watched the Knights play last week and watch them lose 30-odd to 6 to the Warriors and just say the Knights are shit, I'm not betting on them. That's exactly where we wanted them. We were very confident they'd win this game, not facing Sean Johnson. And ultimately, you can blame it on the send-off, but I think that the right team won. And I did say the difference in teams would be defense, grit, and Kalen Ponga. And he gets a hat-trick, and they lapped him.
Yeah, you're right. The difference was definitely not the sin bin. The Knights were winning that game anyway. Let's move on to the Friday night game. It was the Storm beating the Rabbitohs 22 points to 16. Once again, we had a number of best bets on this one. We had 3 best bets on the Rabbitohs. We end up going 1 win, 1 loss, and 1 push. We had the Rabbitohs +6, and they do lose by 6. Honestly, I feel like we got hard done by here. I think the Rabbitohs were the better team in this one, especially in the first half. I thought that they dominated the first half, honestly, and they were unlucky to be up only 14-10 at halftime. It was a couple of breakaway tries from the Storm, and that terrible right side defense. Paulo, to get burnt down the side by the Fox is unforgivable almost. And, that was the difference. And the Storm just grinded them out in the second half. I thought the second half was fairly even. Storm were probably the slightly better team. But the Rabbitohs should have been up by more than 4 points at halftime. They had numerous chances, I swear. Down the left-hand side, they had overlaps on a number of chances, especially in the first 20 minutes. I counted 3 or 4 times that they had numbers down the left. They didn't go there. They're going to improve from that, and maybe, you can blame that on Latrell being there, an extra playmaker. Corey Allen's not, a fullback that's going to get in there and play make. But, it's tough loss for the Rabbitohs. Now, they were a long shot for making the top 4, but now they definitely can't. And in the second half, it was just absolutely pissing down. Any try is going to be gold, and Jackson Paulo puts down an absolute sitter for this Bunnies side. So rough loss for the Bunnies. The Storm, once again, just a solid performance by them. But really, I don't think that the Storm deserved to win this game. Not by 6, definitely. What did you think, Jacob?
Well, the Bunnies showed glimpses of the beautiful form they've been in the last 2 weeks in scoring 14 points in the first half, and that's without Mitchell, and they did miss him, and it was in steady rain in the first half that got even heavier in the second, so points were so valuable. And we took South Sydney not because we said they're definitely going to win, but because we saw this as like a true coin flip type matchup. And the Bunnies were at home catching, 4.5 at $2, or you could get +6. So we just felt we had to be getting the points here. And I don't want to take away from the Storm and say they didn't deserve to win it, because they did kind of storm things. But the first try they got when they were down 8-0, you're right, Paulo shows only like well known as the fastest man in the game in Addo-Carr. Way too much space, an invitation to go around him on the outside. Like if you watch the replay, Paulo is like shimmying, like slowing down to show him the sideline. He gladly takes it, and that's a try. And then the Bunnies dropped the ball with 90 seconds to go in the first half when they're up 14-6. And the Storm score like a long-range try in the final minute in the rain, which was a beautiful try. And again, like Olam is in some good touch, but that really hurts you. Obviously, that got the Storm right back in the game. And then second half, I think there's only 2 tries in the game, and they're both by the Storm, and they're both on fifth tackle where they chanced their arm and they ran it, and they come up trumps. And to win by 6, it's unfortunate when we're catching +6 and we have our noses in front all game. And even after the Storm got out in front by 6, Bunnies had chances knocking on the door of the Storm try line, but they fall short. But I guess they can take encouragement that they went toe-to-toe with one of the true premiership contenders. For the Storm, it's critical to get those 2 points, because it keeps them in line for a home final in the first week of the finals, which can lead to a home prelim.
You're absolutely right. They had numerous chances at the end, and I've watched it 5 times, still have no idea how Alex Johnson didn't go over with 5 minutes left there. Let's move on to the Saturday games. It's the Titans beating the Bulldogs 18 points to 14. We did like the Titans in this one, and we cashed both best bets. And the Titans were better in this one, honestly. I know it's only a 4-point win, but they were up big, and the Bulldogs came back late. But the Titans were the better side here. And look, this game, I guess you can say it means, well, it doesn't mean nothing, but the Bulldogs obviously trying to get off the bottom of the ladder. But the game means nothing in terms of like finals footy. And I just want to say, in terms of betting, both teams were up for this one. The Titans were up for this one. The Bulldogs were up for this one. You said last week, Jacob, that the Dogs win games down the stretch, and I agree with you. The Dogs win games down the stretch of the season when they're out of the hunt for the 8, when they sneak up on a team, or a team has a bad game, or a team doesn't need the win late in the season. But when they're playing a team that's up for it, like the Titans were, the Titans just have more talent than them. So it's like one of those ones where you really only want to bet on this Bulldogs team, especially for the rest of the season, if you really think that the other team is not going to be up for it, doesn't need the game, something like that. Because if both teams are going to be 100% motivated for it, the Bulldogs just don't have the talent for it. So look, Titans are out of it as well. But honestly, I really like what I'm seeing out of this Titans team for next season and for this season continuing on. They're building nicely. They're going to get some more talent next year. And they're playing with a little bit of confidence down the stretch here. So Titans are probably a team that I'd look to bet on for the rest of the season. They look like they're back, with some confidence at least down the back stretch.
When you say they're back, what? They haven't been good for years and years. I think they've won one game in their club history. But you're right. Like there's a real vibe around this club. Positivity, Holbrook culture change, and they know the good times are coming. And the guys who are already there now want to cement their spot because they want to be a part of it. It's exciting to see. And that's why round 17 was a cracker of a round, because it pitted a lot of the top sides against each other. And then I think there was at least 3 matches this round with sides that couldn't even make the 8 playing each other. And they all ended up being pretty good games. And we'll get to a couple. But this one, the Titans get the win by 4. There was a bit at stake for the Bulldogs after watching Brisbane lose. If they won, they would have got off the bottom. And for the Titans, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they had still not, as positive as this year's been, they had not won back-to-back games all year. So that was a real challenge for Holbrook to set to his men that, you've had a good year, you've pulled some good results. Last week was a great win against the Dragons at Cogra, but you're playing bottom of the ladder side. It's not acceptable to mail this week in. We've got to be good enough again, and we want to win back-to-back games for the first time because, the true successful clubs can obviously string wins together. They got out in front. I mean, Fogarty, what a find he's been. I should say Fogarty. They've said is the correct pronunciation. And Taylor, there's chat that he's really wants to be there, and he may even renegotiate to take a less salary, which shows positive signs that a guy wants to be there. And the Dogs, well, the Dogs got a couple of soft tries. Kieran Foran strolled in, which you never should let someone with a feeble body like that stroll in so easily. But ultimately, as much as the Dogs were desperate, they can't outclass anybody. The Titans held on, and we cashed both our best bets.
And you're right. And now talk that Papali wants to come back to Queensland. And honestly, after seeing this season, why would you choose the Broncos over the Titans? Let's move on to what was the most ridiculous game of the round. It was the West Tigers beating the Manly Seagulls 34 points to 32. We had a couple of best bets on this one. We did lean to the Tigers. We go 1-1 on our best bets. And what a fucking ridiculous game. I mean, Manly looked absolutely all over them. And I guess this was the thing. It was a tough one for us to bet on because we were thinking, look, are the Tigers, going to be demoralised? Are Manly going to be demoralised? It's kind of, week after they're both mathematically basically eliminated from the 8. So it was a worry who would be up for this one. And the Tigers line came in massively. They closed favourites, I think, in some spots. But Manly was up for it. They get up 20-6 early. And look, you might disagree with this, Jacob, but honestly, they're up 20-6. And I think they probably would have run away with this game if Nofaluma didn't score with a couple of minutes left before halftime. Because that kind of stuff, that little motivation boost can completely change a game. You go into the Sheds down 20-6. You probably know you're going to lose that one, but you go in with a late try and you have some belief. But even then, Manly's up 32 points to 18 with 10 minutes left. The Tigers scored the last 3 tries. Absolutely crazy. Look, what I'd like to say, not a huge amount to take away from a betting perspective in this one, even though both teams are up for this one. But as a general rule, and I think, it didn't apply to the Titans Bulldogs game. It did apply to this one, did apply to the Cowboys one. But when you have 2 teams that are out of the hunt for the 8 down the stretch of the season, you generally do want to look towards the overs because, their defense steps up when games mean a lot. When games don't mean a lot, teams are more willing to throw the ball around a little bit. So it's just something to keep in mind over those last 3 weeks of the season, that when you have 2 teams that aren't fighting for top 8 spots, you probably want to look towards the overs.
No, that's a really good observation because it's clear they've kind of say to themselves well, let's enjoy our footy, guys. Right. Let's not die wondering. Let's go out there and play let's spin it. And it was clear that Manly was going to go out and unleash the shackles. And the Tigers too. The Tigers looked pretty unreal in spells. They were offloading. They were throwing sweet passes. They were making breaks. They often didn't have that finishing touch in the first half.
Harry Grant makes a fuckload of difference.
He is amazing. But they had some amazing like plays where there was 10 plus passes and they couldn't quite ever really they were hanging on just to be in the game at all because they nearly were blown away. I think a little bit of it was Cherry Evans kicking for goal and couldn't make early conversions, while Dwayne, who's the backup kicker, he was, I think he missed his second last kick, but he kicked his first 5 and about 3 were from the sideline, which helped. And he's their big money addition. He proved he was worth it right at the end. Had a double and scores the winning try. But you're right, when Manly got up 32-18, you thought that they would hold on. And I've said this with the matches where there was really nothing at stake this round. You kind of throw matchups and you throw player personnel out the window. It's going to come down to which side wants it more. And I guess both sides really did, which made it a coin flip. And that's why we were comfortable taking the points and we got enough points. We had plus 4.5. Tigers score the winning try when they're down 4. So we wouldn't have needed that, but it was still bloody exciting to watch that finish.
And I will say, moving forward, I would look, just as a general rule, I'd probably look to fade both of those teams next week after such a, ridiculously emotional game. Let's move on to the Raiders losing to the Roosters, 6 points to 18. We didn't have any best bets on this one, but we did have a side bet, Jacob. You had the Roosters minus 6 points. I took the Raiders. You do take $200 off me for that one. And look, the Roosters were better. They deserved to win. Did they deserve to win by 12 points? I don't think so. The Raiders had every chance to fucking win this one. They had so many chances, too many errors, especially in scoring positions. And that's what kills you. When you have, mistakes and errors and drop balls when you have the pill in the 20, and that's what they did, this Raiders side. It was bad completion rate. They had a way worse completion rate than this Roosters side, and that's the difference, with these top teams. I know we talk about the Roosters. They're, arguably when healthy, they're the best team in the comp, the Storm, and it's the same thing every single time. They just take advantage of their opportunities, like we talked about with the Storm game. They get 2 breakaway tries. They take advantage of the limited opportunities they have, and that's the difference. And that was the same difference in this game. The Roosters took their chances. The Raiders didn't. And Teddy, honestly, was the difference maker in this one. He was awesome. He was ridiculous. 2 tries, over 200 meters, 15 tackle breaks, which is an absolute joke. And that was, that along with the Raiders' mistakes was the difference in this one. But I didn't think that it was a 12-point game. The Raiders can improve before the finals here, but that is an absolutely huge win for the Roosters and almost shores up their spot in the top 4.
Well, there's some superstars on the Roosters, none bigger than Tedesco, and the big games is when you look that bloke in the eye and you say, this is where we really need you. In other weeks, you chime in where you see fit, but the superstars are there to win you the games you really need. And I tell you now, just off the top of my head, you go back to 2018 where they won the comp and look at their finals games, the games that they needed to win, and go to 2019 and look at their finals games, and go to 2020, essentially a finals game. And I think you'll find they held their opponent under the team total in every game. So if you just bet Roosters opponents team total under in big games, you win every time, because when they need to win, their defense is on another level. It is to do with coaching. It is to do with how well they are connected. It is to do with what a great unit they are. And then on the other side of things, they can hurt you. But at the end of the day, this game, I think you win 18-6 because you defend so well. And the Raiders have got, weapons out there and got guys like Jack Whiten, but they were kept reasonably quiet. I know that chances went begging, but I feel like the Roosters were always in control. I really felt like it would have been a Herculean effort for the Raiders, and it would have had to been an off night for the Roosters to not win, because, Boyd Cordner's back in the side now. Crichton came back in. Players who you didn't think were their stars, like Tupanua, we talked about last week, these guys have raised the level of their game. Kiri came back in. He only had 1 run, which was in the 80th minute, so obviously protecting that rib, but still orchestrating. And they're so classy. And look, as brave as the Raiders have been, and I don't think they're going to go away, but they won't win the comp now. True. If they had pulled the upset yesterday and they get in the top 4, I loved, the grit of that side, and I love their forward pack, but it's a brutal competition. And that just goes to show, and I said this a few weeks ago when I looked at the draw, that I still thought, as much as you'd love to pick a fairy tale and pick the Raiders to make the 4, it was still going to be the Roosters, and it still will be, and it's still really their competition to lose now. And if people didn't catch the game, it wasn't on Channel 9. You want to know about Sonny Bill? It was kind of a non-story. They showed him all night on the cameras. He got on with about 20 to go and actually got dragged with 5 to go, so got a 15-minute period out there. Came out chasing after the ball, missing tackles or diving at people's ankles, played at a kick ball and caused a 6 again. Really, maybe had one good offload and came off and said, that it was blowing and that, it's a fast game. But my point is, from a punting perspective, people said, the second that Sonny Bill signed, the Roosters' odds to win the premiership would drop $1, and if Sonny Bill's playing, it changes. At this point, no. We'll see what to make of it. Maybe in a month's time, if he's playing in a crucial finals game, obviously match fitness will mean something. But it's about knowing which key players really matter. And I said in the preview that was Luke Keary. He did matter, and they were too good.
They were too good, and that was a huge game, honestly, because now we think the winner of that goes a game ahead of the other in 4th spot, and now the Roosters play the Knights next week. They're resting Ponga. The Knights don't need that game anymore, so that's a massive win for the Roosters. We all know how
for and against. So now they're a game and a half ahead.
So they'd have to they're a game they're a game ahead and a shitload of points differential. So they would have to lose 2 on the home stretch, and the Raiders would have to win out, which isn't going to happen. Let's move on to today's games. It's the Eels beating the Warriors 24 points to 18. We had 4 best bets on this one. We did really like the Eels in this one. We do go 2-1 on best bets with 1 push with the Eels minus 6 points because they did win by exactly 6. And this was a crazy game, honestly. One of the craziest first halves I think I've seen all season long. The Eels were epic to start, and we really thought that they would come out firing. You know, they'd been pretty average over the last couple of months, but they were completely up for this one, which is what we expected. They get out to a 16-0 lead, and at that point, you know, honestly, I thought they might win by 40 plus. They were rolling. Then the Warriors get a sin bin, and the Eels scored 2 tries in a row, and the Eels are absolutely carving them up everywhere. But look, I think I've said this too many times now, but it's like mad props to the Warriors. They show up every fucking week, and I know they still had an outside chance of making the 8, but you're down 16-0 against the Eels. They're rolling you. You got a dude in the sin bin, and, you know, they just hung tough, and they scored 2 of the more ridiculous tries I've seen maybe in my life, definitely this season. The first one was maybe the try of the season to the Warriors, and they just hung tough. And, you know, arguably, if you're a Warriors fan, you'd feel a little bit hard done by because, you know, maybe you could argue that the sin bin was the difference in this one. You know, the Eels scored 2 tries when you had 12 guys on the field, and you lose by 6. So, big win for the Eels, honestly, because that pretty much cements their place in the top 4 now. That would have been a bad loss for them. But, you know, tough for the Warriors. And I do wonder, we've said this all along from a betting perspective, you know, it's been rough to bet on the Warriors because they've been winning. They've been covering basically every single week for the last couple of months. And everyone's betting on them. So you're getting basically zero value on this Warriors side. But I do wonder now that they're mathematically eliminated from the 8, whether there is a bit of a letdown for them.
It's crazy, yeah. Like, we got a lot of resistance taking the Eels. So on our Wednesday preview, we said we really felt the Eels would win this game.
Yep.
But that line being, you know, greater than 6 was pretty steep. And then a bit more news kind of coming out about how the Warriors literally needed staff members to help run their training drills. And our confidence grew, and we could see that line wasn't going to drop. But we said, you know, we're still going to jump on the Eels. And this is an example of punting getting the best number. So on the Friday night game, if I can rewind, we got the Rabbitohs +6. I mean, really, wherever you looked, you wouldn't have got a better line than +4.5. And we got +4.5 at $2. But I know a lot of people following don't always love the mechanical bets that we give out. And I wonder if it's just that extra effort that they have to place 2 bets instead of 1. But that's an example where we took the $2 line at 4.5, and then we put a 5% stake on an exact margin of 6. And the Rabbitohs lost by 6. So, You know, a lot of people say, why bother with that? But you lost if you didn't do that. And in this game, the Eels line was 6.5 or higher everywhere, but we laid 6.5 at $2. We had 5% at 17-1 of an exact win by 6. And again, if you laid out $100, you actually got back 102, and your team didn't cover. And in saying all that, that's where getting the best number helps you in the long run. But you also want to be on the right side. Now, that's very debatable whether we were. I mean, the Warriors, springs to mind that they were down 16-0 against Penrith as well a few weeks ago and lost by 6 when you thought they'd get blown out. And again, it happened here. So it's incredible courage by this team to fight back. And you're right, like some freakish tries, like a bit fluky. They kept the ball alive like crazy. At 16-0, and they get a try off a deflected kick, and then RTS magic leads to a try, and all of a sudden it's 16-12, and they fought tooth and nail. Obviously, with the Sharks' loss a couple days ago, a win here would have pulled them within 2 points of the 8, and they play the Sharks next weekend, and we know the Sharks have players out, so that would have served as big motivation. Well, now maybe it is a bridge too far. But for the Eels, it's like, well, they were playing against a desperate side, and at some point they did feel they just were trying to protect the lead. But it definitely, they don't have that killer instinct that they had earlier in the year. So it's like, you're still not impressed by what you saw by Parramatta, but they eked it out. But I guess for once, we might not have had the right side, but we still actually won money with our best bets, going 2-1, winning the race to 20, and winning the first half line as well.
I think we probably still had the right side. I mean, Eels butchered a couple of chances, like Fergo dropped an absolute sitter early on, and like you said, 2 very lucky tries. And I would argue that, you know, if those lucky tries don't happen, then maybe, you know, it's all hypothetical, but maybe the Eels go on with it from there, because that's just a massive confidence boost when you put up like the try of the year to get back in the game. Let's move on to the final game. It's a Sunday night game, what we just watched. The Cowboys beat the Dragons 23 points to 22. Shit, I forgot to add the ticks and the crosses on this one, but we do go 3-1 on this one with 4 best bets. We liked the Cowboys, and a lot of people gave us shit for liking the Cowboys in this one as well. They've been pretty bad all season long. But I kind of said, like, this is the last home game that they realistically have a chance to win. They're going to want to put in a massive effort, and that's exactly what they did. They were solid in this one. The Dragons were also up for this one, which I didn't quite expect. And that was part of my handicap, I guess. I thought that the Dragons might be a little bit let down out of the top 8 hunt after giving up a lead last week. So I thought they had come in a little bit flat, but they weren't. And, props to the Cowboys because, when you bet a game like that, you expect, Cowboys are going to be up for this one. Dragons might not be, but they totally were. They're up at halftime. You're thinking, oh, geez, the Dragons do look better. And, Valentine Holmes made a couple of terrible mistakes in the first half. He was honestly a liability in the first half. They're going to get better. He's going to get better, obviously, but made a few terrible mistakes. And, the Cowboys really wanted this one, and they stepped up in the second half. And what I'll say it again. From a betting perspective, I thought both teams threw it round a little bit more than they normally would, which is what you get when two teams are completely out of the hunt for the 8. I'll say another thing from a betting perspective, similar to the last game I spoke about, is that I don't think I'd want to touch either of these teams next week. And it's, an emotional win for the Cowboys, and they're not still in the 8. Emotional win, I expect a bit of a letdown spot. And another brutal loss for the Dragons after traveling to Townsville. So I wouldn't want to touch either of these teams. Obviously, it depends on the lines, but just generally, after a game like this, extra time, emotional and physically draining game.
Not only did they throw it around, but neither of these teams are great defensively. No. Look at the try to Aitken that lets the Dragons back in the match in the first half. It's like you literally watch the Cowboys players rock back onto their heels to stand still with a simple kind of hesitation by Hunt.
Yep.
And he throws a ball to a center when there wasn't even an overlap to go through without being touched. So I was very worried there. The Dragons scored 12 straight in the first half to go into halftime with a lead. And look, you talked about motivation. It's like if we could always know the games where one side was massively up for it and the other wasn't, we'd be recording this pod from bloody on a yacht somewhere. Like you can never. It's not that easy. But we questioned the Dragons' motivation. Yep. Like we didn't know if they'd be fully up for it or not. In the end, they fought pretty hard. But what we were much more confident in is that the Cowboys were going to give you 80 of effort. Yes. Like, been a very tough year, but they're at home. They do generally play a bit better at QBC. It was a chance to have a positive memory at this stadium, which have been few and far between this year. And you got to remember
last in the season, which they
and they had to play some games in front of a truly empty stadium. At least, like in Queensland, you can have a few thousand people. These are their these are their members coming to watch them. They deserve to get a performance, and some performances have been lacking. And the Cowboys, fought tooth and nail. So then, even if both sides fought, we knew it would be reasonably close, and it certainly was. And again, you like catching the points in a close game because we had plus 4.5, we had plus 2.5 second half, we had Cowboys winning at halftime or full time.
Got lucky on that one.
Well, yeah, got that right at the death to pull, as you said at the very beginning, a 12-4 very profitable round of punting.
Not lucky on that one, to be honest, but Corey Norman, Jesus Christ, the guy has a boot on him from 40 out. I
thought that was true.
Line. All right, guys, so absolutely awesome week. 12-4 on best bets. It's not going to happen every week, but it certainly has been happening more often than not this season. We're still well over 60% for the season. 3 more rounds to go. Let's keep it up, guys. See you next week at 6 p.m. on Wednesday night. Catch you then.
Lego.